Welcome to this review video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this thing here. This is an Arkbird Auto Antenna Tracker, and what we're going to do is talk very briefly about why you might need an antenna tracker and then go into the details of how this one works, how you set it up and how you get it to make sure that it's working as best it possibly can. Now in this video we are going to assume a couple of things, but what I do want to talk about is how it actually works so that you can hopefully understand a little bit better if you get one of these and you're setting it up, the kind of steps that you need to go through. It does come with a printed manual as part of the kit, but one of the things that I found is that by kind of reading it and setting it up, it's probably easier for me just to show you in the video the kind of steps that you need to go to in order to get this thing working. I do have to say a very big thank you to hobbyking.com for this product. This is on the Hobby King website. I'll put a link in the description. This is a nice kit because Hobby King also include one of the optional GPS units as well that you actually need to get this to work. Now the GPS can actually plug into a couple of different places, and we'll go through what's in the kit in a second, but GPS is at the heart of how antenna trackers work and how they make sure that the antenna is always pointing at the model. So let me just go through the couple of bits and pieces that we have in front of us, and then we'll jump into a couple of slides and I'll explain how it actually works. So the main part of the antenna tracker is this big piece here. It's actually got suckers on the bottom. There's also a hole which is just big enough to take a 1/4 inch mounting bolt for a tripod, and then the way it works is that the unit actually turns left and right, and then the piece at the front tilts up and down. Now this Velcro doesn't come on it, I've attached that for my antenna. And the way it works is that what it's supposed to do is as you fly around, it's actually tracking your craft in flight. In addition to that, you also get the airside module. So this is the module that actually goes onto the craft. The GPS plugs into one side, like that. And then the other two pieces, one side plugs into your FPV equipment and your camera, the other side plugs into your FPV transmitter. So now we've got an idea of what the airside components look like and what the ground side components look like, let's very quickly talk about how a tracker actually works. So here we have a little graphic. We have our antenna tracker stuck on top of a tripod on the ground, and we have our model in the air. Now the way this works is that the model has that live GPS actually on it, and that GPS is feeding live coordinates and also height information to the airside module all the time. And then the antenna tracker on the ground has a GPS location stored, or with this Arkbird you can also plug a GPS into the ground station as well, so the ground station doesn't have to be taught where it's sat, it can actually get that information directly from a locally attached GPS too. It's actually the same GPS that you get for the airside module. They're relatively inexpensive, you just plug one in. But for the purpose of this, we'll just assume that we now have a model in the air that has a live GPS working on it, connected to the airside Arkbird unit, and we have our antenna tracker on the ground that knows where it is. Now the way it works is that it actually transmits the GPS coordinates from the model on top of both the video and the audio signals as well. So it doesn't actually affect the video and audio, they still come down and they still appear in the goggles just as they would normally, but the ground unit can actually strip off the data stream from both the video and the audio, so it gives you a bit of redundancy, and then use that information to figure out where the plane is. Once it's done that, then it can actually try and figure out the direction and also the angle it needs to point to in order to be pointing directly back at that craft, because it knows where the craft is, because it now has the GPS coordinates of the local model, it also has the GPS coordinates of where it is. It also has the relative height differences, so it can figure out, using a bit of basic trigonometry, exactly the position it needs to be in, and it can move into that position and make sure the antenna is pointing directly at the model. And then as the model flies around, then what we're getting is the antenna tracker is moving using the two servos on it, one to rotate and the other one to move the antenna up and down so that it keeps track. So we just jump back to the desk for a second. Let's look a bit closer at the airside module first, and then we'll look at the ground side piece. So the airside module itself, this is covered in the manual, but the way it works is that we have a power and video in on the left hand side, and then we have all of our out connections on the right hand side. And for a 12-volt system, this is really easy because this is a 12-volt board. So if you're running a 3S battery, you can just plug it directly into that, or if you have a 12-volt system coming out of your power distribution board on your craft, you can plug it into that as well. So if we just jump into a quick slide, so here we have it. We have the 3 pins that you connect on the left hand side where you connect the power and video in. So the ground is at the top, the 12 volts is in the middle, and the video in is at the bottom. And then on the right hand side, those 4 pins, we have the ground at the top again, 12 volts again, then we have video out and audio out. So what's happening here is the video is coming in from the camera, and then the Arkbird airside module is then encoding the GPS coordinates, X, Y, and Z, so its position on the planet and also height, and then what it's doing is it's embedding that information into both the video and audio stream, and then sending that to the FPV transmitter to come down to the ground station. Very quickly, let's talk about how you wire this up. So if we had a standard 5-volt system, and the reason I'm talking about 5 volts here is because there's a little bit more involved if you're running something like a Fat Shark or Immersion RC system that uses 5-volt cameras. So here I have my Fat Shark transmitter on the right hand side, and I have my camera 5-volt Fat Shark camera on the left hand side, and we have a 12-volt power supply that goes into both the video transmitter, and the video transmitter gives me my 5 volts that plugs into the camera. So how would we plug this airside module into that, because it's using 12 volts? So I just want to talk about that. So for those of you that are looking to get this, that do use Fat Shark or 5-volt systems, it's a little bit easier. The 12 volt is covered in the manual, and it's relatively straightforward because it's all 12 volts. First thing we need to do, of course, is pop the Arkbird airside module right in the middle with its locally attached GPS. And what we need to do is not only provide the 12 volts to the video transmitter, but we also need to provide that 12 volts to the ground and plus 5 volts on the inside, on the left hand side of the Arkbird airside module. So that is the power taken care of. Next thing we need to do then is to connect all of the outputs of the Arkbird airside module to our video transmitter. So ground to ground, video out to video in, and audio out to audio in as well. And even if we're not going to use audio on the ground station, we don't want to hear the sound of the engine running and the noise, we still need to connect that really, because what we want is that signal to come down so the ground station can hear it, and we have that redundant connection for the GPS coordinates. Last thing we need to do then is to connect our camera. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to connect the 5 volts from the video transmitter and the ground into the back of the camera, and we're going to connect the video out into the video in on the left hand side of the Arkbird airside module. So that appears a little bit complicated, but that's what I've actually done here. So if we go back to the desk, what I've done is I've actually created this little rig here with a little 25 milliwatt FPV transmitter with a little Fat Shark antenna, and that is plugged into my airside unit, and that airside unit is then connected into my camera. So it looks a little bit messy on this board, but the reason I've done it this way is because I want to be able to kind of demo it and show you it working, rather than inside of a plane where it's very difficult to get the camera angle and to see what we're looking at. So the Arkbird ground station is very straightforward to wire up. It comes with a couple of cables in the kit. We have a GPS connector at the back if you wanted to locally attach a GPS. We're not using it like that, and I'll talk about what you do when you set everything up. The 2 cables to actually use are very straightforward. One plugs into the front, which we'll do in a sec. At the other end we have a power cable, and then we have cables for video and audio to connect to the FPV receiver. That just plugs into this connector at the front. Done. And then the other one is the power cable, comes with an XT60 connector on it, and that just plugs into the bottom. And then here we have our video out RCA connector that we can connect our goggles or ground station to. Now the next thing of course is then to actually attach the receiver. So we're going to need our FPV receiver. The one I'm actually using this thing here. This is an Immersion RC Uno 5800. It's one I've had for ages. The aerial that I'm actually using is this little 5-turn helical. Now, the reason that we're using an antenna tracker is this will give us far more range, but it has a cone of reception. So rather than use something like this Quantum aerial here, which is a circular polarized antenna, which has reception all the way around, this will give us much longer reception, but only in one direction. And the longer the aerial, the more turns it has, the more narrow the beam. So this is a perfect aerial. This, or something like a patch antenna, is what you're going to use on something like an antenna tracker. So connect this up is very straightforward. We're going to plug in the little cable into the AV out. That's going to give me my video and audio out. We're going to, and now you can see why I have the Velcro, pop this onto the front of the antenna tracker. I'm going to connect then the audio and the video lead. I'm going to then plug in the power into the FPV receiver, and there we are, my ground station is ready to go. Now, there are a couple of ways you could do this. Obviously, you could install the receiver actually onto the back of the antenna tracker itself, and then just have the antenna at the front. This is the way though I've been using it, and it's been very happy with it. If I take this off, you can see that they have thoughtfully provided a hole if you wanted to actually mount, hopefully you can see that, there we go, mount your antenna directly onto this thing using something like an antenna extension cable, something like this. Then you could do that. You can actually pop this through the hole at the front, screw that on, and then attach your antenna on here, and then you attach the other end of the cable onto your receiver. So lots of different mounting options, very, very good. So if you have something like a big patch antenna, a big square thing, then that will go on here. Like I said, I've been using it like this with both the receiver and the aerial on here, and apart from looking like a baby Dalek, it works absolutely fantastic. So now we've got that done and we have both of the pieces wired up, I think it's about time we actually show you what the process is to get this thing ready for actual flight. So the first thing we need to do then is I would recommend that you power up the airside module first and wait for a GPS lock. Now you'll know when the airside is connected properly because you'll have this fast flashing light on the top right hand corner of the board. When it's flashing fast like this, it means that it's detecting a video signal, and it's also listening to the GPS as well, which is great. It doesn't mean you have a GPS lock, it just means that the two important things that it's getting externally, which is your video feed and a connection to the local GPS module, are both working fine. Once you have that, then the next thing to do is to power up your ground station and check for the flashing lights on the back, particularly the red one and the yellow one. Now the red one on the left hand side will initially probably be solid, and then when that starts to flicker really quickly, then what's happened is the GPS lock has happened on the airside module, and it's then coming down over the link, and it's been received by the ground station and interpreted and updated. So once you get to the point where your red light is flashing and the yellow light is flashing as well, you can see that the red light is working. It indicates your GPS is being received and understood, and the yellow light flashing means that it's picking that information up from the video feed. Also then we have our green LED at the right hand side. The green LED should pulse and flash as well, and that also means that it's detecting the GPS information being overlaid onto the audio channel 2. Once that's all working and you're ready, then you need to make sure that the GPS is close to the antenna tracker, and you need to press and hold the button under the red LED on the very left hand side. Press and hold that for 5 seconds, and then that will flash once, and that will store the GPS location that it can see right there as you press the button. It will then store it as its own home location. Again, if you're using another GPS locally connected to the ground station, you don't need to bother with that. Then the next thing you need to do, which is really, really critical, is you need to calibrate this unit, because not only does it need to know about the GPS coordinates, it needs to know where magnetic north is as well. So you press and hold the middle button, and you press and hold that for about 5 seconds, and you know when you've pressed it long enough because the little transmitter tray will tilt up to about 30-45 degrees. Immediately move away, make sure there's no metal around, and this thing will do a little dance. It will spin around 6 times. And what it's doing is calibrating its onboard magnetometer, its onboard compass, to figure out where it is and what direction it's pointing in. Once it's finished, it should be pointing exactly north. I would recommend that you pause at this point, take out your smartphone or have a compass handy, or just look on Google Earth and see which direction is north, and use the left and rightmost button, the buttons under the red and green LED. Every time you press that, it will adjust the heading by about 5 degrees in one or other direction. Take your time with this, make sure that it's actually pointing north. I found with mine that it was a bit hit and miss, and that you could take a bit of time to actually get it pointing north. Once you're happy that it is pointing north, then press the middle button again, which is the calibrate button. It should then swivel right 90 degrees and also incline the plate to about 30 degrees up, looking into the sky. You press the middle button again, it'll swivel another 90 degrees, so now it should be pointing exactly due south, and it'll tilt the plate up to about 60 degrees elevation, and then you press it one more time, it should flick round one final time, it should be pointing exactly due west, and the plate should be horizontal. At that point, you know you're calibrated, and then you press the middle button one more time. The red LED will start pulsing again to show you that it's receiving GPS and it's happy, and then you press the green button on the right hand side once, and then it flicks into tracker mode, and it'll whip round and immediately try and acquire the plane by listening to the GPS and comparing it with the GPS location it has stored as its own position. You absolutely need to make sure that you double check when you fly for the first time that you have calibrated it properly. We'll talk about this again in a second, but going through that process is the easy way to do it. So again, power up the airside, power up the ground station, make sure the red and yellow lights are flickering, ideally the green one too. Press and hold the red LED's button to store the location. Go through the calibration routine using the middle button. If you need to adjust the north position, use the buttons either side. And then once you've done that, complete the calibration, and then you should be good to go. So in summary, I've been using this for a couple of weeks now, and I have been very impressed. It's relatively easy to set up. It's very easy to kind of configure and set up at the field. I tend to just use the hole at the bottom, stick it on top of a tripod, and then let it do the rest. The thing that I have found with this is you just need to be a little bit careful of is two things really. First of all, using NTSC cameras caused me to have a problem. If I set my cameras to be PAL, which on the Fat Shark stuff is just a little jumper at the back, it worked brilliantly. And if it was set to NTSC, then I wasn't getting that little flashing light that we looked at in the video. And the second thing was, occasionally after the calibration, it wouldn't accurately track the craft. It was always slightly ahead or slightly behind. Usually the height was okay, but it was actually the direction that was a problem. So occasionally I'd set it up and I'd spend time and accurately lock it onto magnetic north, and then when I was flying it would actually be a little bit out all the time. So although I was receiving things because of the range of the antenna that I had on this antenna tracker, I wasn't getting an optimal signal. So in those instances, I would always recommend that what you do is when you set this up at the field, have a test flight, just fly it up and down the sight line and just see whether or not this thing is tracking it, because in theory it should be pointing absolutely directly to the craft. If it's not, and it's kind of 20 or 30 degrees out, make a note of which way that is, land your plane, and then go through the calibration routine again, but this time, rather than line it up exactly with north, take that deviation into account, redo the calibration so that it's 20 or 30 degrees out, so it's taking account of that. Go up, fly again, and see whether or not that's taking care of it. You'll probably find that the second time, after you've done it a couple of times, you'll kind of get the hang of it, and then the second time out, if it's absolutely locked on, then you are ready to fly and try and push for a little bit further on. Don't forget that there are legal limits in a lot of places that limit how far away you can fly, particularly using FPV, so be aware of that. With this kind of equipment, even with a 25 milliwatt transmitter, but these kind of helical antennas, you can easily get several miles range without pushing it too much. But just check your local bylaws legislation, because for a lot of places that is not legal. But in conclusion, if you are looking for an antenna tracker that you just want to be able to get out of the box, wire it up and get it working, the Arkbird Auto Antenna Tracker is a really nice solution. It's well thought out. The fact that Hobby King also provide things like the GPS for the airside unit as well means it is truly a plug and play system. So thank you again to the guys at Hobby King for sending this to try. Again, the link's in the description if you want to try it yourself. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.